Good morning, everyone, and happy almost Halloween. Um, where did October go? Where did 2021 go? That's the question I keep asking. Um, so today we're going to do something just really super cute and simple. And the title of my card is Mummy's Day. But if you noticed in the email, I spelt it intentionally with the U, M-U-M-M-Y. We are going just to use some white strips and create a Halloween mummy and just have a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to be using just paper throughout the whole thing, but this is an excellent opportunity for things like googly eyes and extra little bits of things. If you have your distressing tool, I didn't think about that till just now, but you could easily have roughed up the sides of your strips to create that torn bandage mummy look. And you know what? I love doing cards like this because one of the things I personally have a lot of fun doing is taking simple things like strips or circles or just basic shapes and seeing what else I can turn them into. It makes a really cute, whimsical kind of look. Way back in the day, I did reindeer and Santa and Frankenstein, just using basic shapes like triangles, circles, and rectangles. So this is a really fun opportunity to really stretch your imagination. And at the end of this session, I may even challenge you to some homework to see what else you can come up with. But having said that, let's just jump right into our crafting. If you are watching me live, as always, feel free to mute and unmute and ask any questions you may have. I've just turned on the chat bar as well. If you are watching on replay, please pause and rewind as you need and drop questions in the comments. Or as always, you can email me at customerservice@craftersworkshop.ca. So to get started today, I've just got a regular A2 card base. This is a fabulous technique for doing any size you want. So you could do a slimline. You could be decorating a treat bag or a treat bag topper. You could do this on a circle card. You could do this in your scrapbooking. It's just a really fun technique. And I've just decided to do an A2 card because that's what I have handy. The other things I have ready is I have a piece of black cardstock that I have trimmed down just slightly smaller than my card base. So it is 4 by 5 1/4. Most of this is going to get covered up. So in theory, you could have done white or gray, but there is going to be a sliver that and little gaps may happen. So that's why I chose black. I felt that it would just create that darker background for myself. And then I've cut a whole bunch of white strips. Now it looks like my largest one might be 5/8 of an inch. I might have a 3/4 of an inch in here. To be honest, I did not measure really at all. I just kind of eyeballed, and we can always cut these down. So mine are definitely longer than what we need, but again, maybe we can do some fun stuff with it. And then I also just have my ink dauber. I've got some distress inks, mostly because I've got them in the cute little tin, so it was super easy to grab. But for this, you can use any ink that you have. Just be careful if you're using something like an oxide ink or a pigment ink, that those do take a little bit longer to dry. So you may get messier on your hands, and just be careful. But you know what? Mummies aren't neat and tidy. So if you get fingerprints and smudges and everything else, that might actually add to the character as opposed to taking away from it. And then as we finish out, I've got a couple of circle punches in 2 different sizes that I'm going to use to make eyeballs. I could punch them out of white, but as I was packing up this morning, I thought, well, maybe green eyeballs would be fun, or orange. So I did just grab some scraps to play with when we get to that point. All right, so we're going to start with, I'm just going to start with a few strips, and I'm going to start just kind of lightly edging them with some ink. I think I think I'm going to use crushed olive and frayed burlap. So it's kind of a greeny color, and this is a browny gray. I'm going to also grab my decisions. I'm going to grab my vintage photo. No, I'm going to use walnut stain. I like walnut stain better. And we're just going to lightly edge up. And for this technique, I may just end up using the same inky bit for all three colors. I don't feel like I'm going to use enough ink that it'll cross-contaminate. If you have multiple tools, you can have one per color, but it's totally up to you. Now, I'm going to start with the green. And the reason for that is I want to see how bright it ends up being. We don't want this necessarily to be a bright green mummy. So I'm going to then layer on the other colors to tone it down. So that's why I'm just starting with the green, assuming I can get it open. Feels like it's pretty stiff this morning. And all I am doing is just kind of edging the edges, just applying the ink. I still want a lot of the white showing. So in some areas, I don't know if you can see, let the camera focus there for a second. I've got some bigger smudges here, but that's the benefit of having longer pieces, is that you can move things around and maybe not use parts that you don't like or cover them up. And you can see I'm going a long way on just a very little bit of ink. Looks like the frayed burlap that was in here now starting to come through. You don't have to do the full edge. And this is me just getting the pieces ready to go. So I'll come back, I'll add some more colors onto those. I'm not being careful. I'm just quickly, and this is just going to help our bandage strips kind of stand out from each other. Like I said, you could have used one of those distressing tools that, chews up the edges. Or if you like a cleaner mummy, then by all means, let's do these ones. You can skip this step. So I've got a bunch here. I'm going to finish these last two and then we'll move on. And if I need more, I can always come back and make more. This green is actually not looking too badly. It's not as bright as I feared it might be. So there, I'm going to close up the crushed olive and I'm going to switch back to my frayed burlap just to tone it down a little bit. But by layering them together, you're going to get some nice tones, some nice dimension. Now I've got to make sure I have two piles so I don't mix up my brown ones and my not brown ones. If you had paper that maybe was a little bit more on that creamier or even browner side, you could use that. Whoops. If you feel like you're getting too much ink on your dauber, just dab off onto your scrap paper. This is definitely one of those cases where less is more. We don't need anything too fancy or high coverage. But I like how the brown is helping just tone down that green a little bit, making it look very grungy. Very grungy. Last one. And I think at this point, I don't feel like I need a lot more color or depth, so I'm not going to go into that third color. That was just if this was really looking pretty bright. So I am now done my inking. And if you guys are still working on your inking, you can just keep going. Like I said, I may have to go back and add some and do some more as we go along. But now, ultimately, let me take a breath and let you guys follow along. I'm going to take this black cardstock and I'm going to start gluing and layering my strips to wrap my mummy. And I'm not going to go straight. I might go straight on that bottom one, but as I build up, you definitely want it to look wrapped. And you know, no matter how hard you try and wrap something, it never ever ends up perfectly straight. So it's totally okay. That one's got a big smoosh on it, so I'm going to find a good place to hide it. And I'm just going to build my layers up. Now, one thing we are going to try and keep in mind is as we get to about a third of the way down, we want to leave kind of a triangular shaped gap where that black is showing through. And this is where our eyeballs are ultimately going to be placed. But I also do want those layers to be on the top. So that's why I'm not starting there. I'm starting at the bottom and I'm going to build up. I may come down from the top and then finish off with this area in the middle. So for speed, I think I'm going to use a liquid glue. You could use your tape runner as well. You know, maybe I will. I'm going to switch to my tape runner. And honestly, literally just going to smack them down. And it's totally okay that pieces are off the edge because we can trim those down. So this bottom one, I'm placing right flush at the bottom. And I'm actually going to cut. No, I'm going to wait. I'll wait and cut a little bit later. So now this piece, I'm going to so this one will go on an angle, and it's okay if you've got a few little gaps showing. No mummy is perfect. This one I'm not, because again, I want to hide this little smooshy bit so I know that's a good place to do it. And then come over here. I've got a bit of a gap here on this side. And keep wrapping them up. But see how those layers are just really starting to take life. That little bit of inking makes a huge difference to make it stand out. I've got one more strip here, and then it looks like I'm going to have to distress a few more. This is kind of where I want to end. So I think maybe this last strip I'll put on the top so it doesn't go to waste. Once again, the top, I'm going to go flush along the edge just as our starting point. Okay, at this point, I do need to distress just a few more strips, but I'm going to flip over and I'm going to do my trimming while I'm here. Because you never know, these little pieces may come in handy as well. I have an idea that I'm going to show in a second. Trim all our little bits off. I'm just using my scissors and following the edge of my black. You could use your guillotine trimmer as well. Especially if some of the layers get really thick, your scissors may not work super well. There we go. And the last one. Okay, the little bits I'm going to get rid of. Save these larger bits. Okay, so before I ink, how many more do I need? I'm going to do one. Actually, I may only need like 2 or 3 more. Because this I can fill in. Maybe not. Okay, I'm going to ink up 3 more strips and see where that gets me. Just cleaning off most of the ink from my dauber since I am using 2 colors with 1 sponge. You know what, for good measure, while I've got everything out, let's do 4. And this is where I wish we weren't live because I could do the speed action camera. Not that I know how to do that, but you've seen me do this already. Just a few more strips. But this is, as you can see, would be a great way to use up scraps that you might have in your stash. And hey, you could have a lot of fun with it. If you were if you were giving a Halloween card to, you know, a little girl who loves unicorns and rainbows, you could do a whole rainbow mummy. That would be kind of cool. Or maybe you're doing a Frankenstein mummy hybrid and do them in green. Do, 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 do. All right, a few more. I've switched colors now just to tone that green down. And ladies, I hope I'm not going too fast. Please let me know if you need me to repeat anything or slow down a little bit. All right. So let's finish up these guys. And remember, I want to kind of end something like that. So it looks like I need, I'm going to save those. I'm going to need to fill in this left-hand side there. So let's do a little piece here. And the nice thing about using tape runner, and I'm actually kind of happy that I did this, is if you need to lift up to tuck under, the tape runner is pretty forgiving to be able to do that. Kind of want to do that. So for example, I'm going to take one of these little bits and I'm going to tuck it under to fill in a big gap that we've got here. And now for my top layers, now I can go like this. Oh, and now I'm getting a little bit too, I want more black in the gap here. So let's come even further down. And that's okay that it's peeking out there. Actually, now I'm feeling like I don't have enough space. So let's bring this guy down. Oh, tape runner, thank you for being forgiving. There, and then nope, that little guy's not working for me. There. Anyways, we get the idea. So here we've got our mummy just about ready. I'm going to trim off those edges. We'll have our nice clean rectangle. But if you've ever seen mummies in the movies or on Scooby-Doo, they're not always neat and tidy in these rows. So I am going to use some of these little bits to make some little hangy bits, some extra tassels, some stringy band-aids hanging down. I'm just gonna play around with it. That one's gonna be a sharp edge because it's gonna be kind of like a fold, actually. And I'm gonna tear the end here just to give it that rough edge. Let's do that. All right, so this one's gonna kind of go down here. Ink that too. And let's do another one. And then we just have one more little bit, and that is our eyeballs. Let's do one more. Let's stick one more tassel-y bit. Right there. All right, let's tuck in here. Okay. This makes me giggle. He's really coming together. So now the last thing, or the second last thing, I guess, and maybe I'll do the last thing first and then the second last thing last. I'm going to put this right on my card. Before I do that, I'm going to just take that little bit of ink, take some of the whiteness down. We don't want anything too stark. Okay, I'm going to put this guy on some foam tape, which fortunately I just happen to have hanging off my basket here. Maybe one more piece. Make sure he is right side up, since we've got our little tassels on there. All right. All we need now is eyeballs. So I have a 1-inch circle punch and a 3/4 inch circle punch. You can use whatever size you want. I don't know that I would go, more than say even 1.5, and that depends on how big your gap is. And just make sure that your next layer down is at least, 1/4 inch smaller. You can have a lot of fun. I've also done eyes with ovals. So have a lot of fun with your shapes and see what punches you have. Shapes are always fun. And because, yeah, I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to use green for my eyeballs and then just black for the pupils. 1 and 2. So these eyeballs look a little stark, so let's edge them up. Not a whole lot, but just enough to take the clean look off of it. There we go. Those are gonna go. You can overlap them. They look really cute and cartoony when you do that. And I am doing the eyeballs first and actually sticking them down because sometimes it's easier to position the pupils when you know where the eyeballs are already situated and where they're lining up. So let me use my smaller one to do just 2 little black. How cute is that? He's certainly making me giggle. Let's get them tucked under. And hey, if you had Nuvo drops or even glossy accents, you could put some highlights on him. If you had a black pen, do I have a thin black pen? I think this is going to be too thick. Oh, not too bad. I hope I don't ruin it doing this, but I'm going to give him a smiley face. You could get really creative and give them eyelashes. But how cute is that? That really just does make me smile, and it was fun just being able to put it together with some basic strips. And you know what? The nice thing about these being lighter is that if you wanted to, you could take a sentiment, a tiny little sentiment stamp. Let's see what I've got here. Eat, drink, and be scary. That to me feels very appropriate. Or this one also has creeping by to say hi. No, let's do eat, drink, and be scary. Inkity, inkity. I'm just going to test this to make sure it's straight. It is. Because sometimes with those sentiment strips, it's hard to get them straight on your block. So there you go. I love him. So that is what I have for you on this almost Halloween, dreary, gloomy, very fall morning. Thank you for joining me this morning. I did say I was going to give you some homework or a challenge. So if you're continuing to craft today, I challenge you to play with strips, play with shapes like the circles, triangles for Frankenstein's hair, triangles for Dracula. See what else you can do that is inspired by this kind of idea. Doesn't have to be Halloween either. Maybe you do some elves or some snowmen, and then post your creations in the Papercrafts inner circle. I would love to see what you come up with. And you know what, now that the juices are flowing and the scraps are out, this is the perfect time to enjoy that. So thank you very much, everyone, and happy Halloween.